which is why today we're working with images of Kimmy on the cell phone.
It was just one of those moments which happen when I work with William, where we both went off and played. One of the things about working with William that I enjoy so much is the ability to play and experiment.
When I was about 15, I had this, people had to say, what did you think you were going to study? What did you think you were going to be when you were an adult? Lawyer, engineer, deep-sea diver, marine biologist. I think I actually made the foolishness of writing down once in some survey class that I wanted to be a conductor. And somebody said, oh, that's okay. You know you have to be able to read music to be a conductor. I said, oh, you actually have to read... Oh, no, then okay, we'll change that one. When I started working with film, music became the natural adjunct. Then in the theatre work, it started with music as an element of the theatre. From that came the desire, well, what about doing live music with the theatre? Live music added to the theatre turned into first a chamber opera, the Monteverdi Ulysses. And another chamber opera based on Zeno, and then a full-scale opera, The Magic Flute. While working on Magic Flute, I became very much aware of themes that were implicit in the opera, but were very difficult to make explicit in the production without destroying the opera. The whole question of the authority of Sarastra and the certainty of the Enlightenment. When it seemed possible to have a benevolent dictator, someone who would combine wisdom with authority and violence. Black Box takes the same form as the model of the Magic Flute, made with mechanical performers, and the historical look it takes is not in 1791 when Mozart wrote the opera, but the German expedition to Africa in 1904 and the genocide of the Hereros. The List of the Dead that Alfred Machalimeli sings, that lament, is an improvised hymn that he made based on the melody of the priest's march at the beginning of Act 2 of the Magic Flute. The recording we use in Black Box, it was made in Berlin in 1937. And there's a sense of what does it mean to be singing a song about the benevolence of humankind and the brotherhood of man, with all the Nazi brass celebrating that moment. If I didn't find the music beautiful and seductive, then one could just ignore it. But the fact that one is caught by it, but understands that intolerable situation in which it was being produced, is the starting point of the energy to spend those months making the piece. In the anamorphic film, What Will Come Has Already Come, which is about the Italian-Ethiopian War of the 1930s, works on the principle that what is distorted in the projection gets corrected in the viewer's seeing of it in a mirror. So the distortion is the correction, and the original is the distorted. One of the things of doing the film or doing the drawings was learning the grammar of the transformations that happen when you go from a flat surface to the curved mirror. To draw a straight line is relatively complicated because every straight line is in fact a curve, whereas every straight line that you draw becomes a parabola. So looped telephone wires are very easy. You simply draw a series of straight lines on the drawing and the lines will loop themselves around the surface of the cylinder. Whereas if you want a straight line, you've got to calculate a not obvious curve on the sheet of paper. I'm interested in machines that tell you what it is to look, that make you aware of the process of seeing, and make you aware of what you do when you construct the world by looking at it, but more as looking and seeing being a metaphor of how we understand the world. When you look through a stereoscopic viewer, you're aware that you have two completely flat images, and that all that is happening is that your brain is constructing an illusion of three-dimensional depth, which is very clear when you look at the stereoscopic view because you know you're seeing two flat images. What's much less obvious is that that's what we're doing all the time in the world. Our retinas are each receiving flat images, and our brain combines the two images from our retinas into this illusion of coherent depth. And because we do it so well, we believe we're simply seeing depth. So that, again, it's both interesting about the phenomenon and the wow factor of stereoscopes always. But it's more about the agency we have, whether we like it or not, to make sense of the world. The Méliès films are about life in the studio, to gather the energy to begin an image or to continue with it, walking and stalking an image. It's also about being in the studio in which ideas are endlessly bouncing inside, trying to get out. Georges Méliès, the great early French developer of cinema and magician, starting then to do paintings in his studio and performing in front of these paintings and filming those. The homage to Georges Méliès on Journey to the Moon is very much continuing that, performing in the studio with the camera, saying those three things were necessary: the actor, the scenery, and the camera. the studio as engine room. You see how a magic trick is done, but if it's done well, it remains magic. Cinema started as vaudeville, making these even more fantastic. In one frame you can change your costume. You can dissolve two pieces of film together and turn a cat into a telephone in a way that no magician could. So it became a high point of exercises of transformation, and transformation always has to do with understanding the world as process. For a long time I've been wanting to do a project that has to do with Russian modernism and the end of Russian modernism. I came across the short story of Gogol, With the Nose, which struck me astonishingly as an amazing story, and was then talking to a friend about it who then said, you know, there's a Shostakovich opera. When the Metropolitan Opera said they wanted me to do an opera, we spent a long time trying to find one that seemed appropriate. They suggested Shostakovich. I said yes to Shostakovich, but first prize for me would be to do Gogol's story, The Nose. I've always wanted to do a project in which the political history, the formal elements of modernism and constructivism, and the poetry and the writing, all those different things could be looked at. They all come into the production of The Nose, not all of them into the opera, of course, but chunks of them into various other iterations of the material. Just want to use this for the soundtrack. One of the things that's essential for the work to happen, there needs to be a heating up, bringing something to a boil, which is done both by working on something consistently, but also allowing something to throw off possibilities from an initial image. The horse is going to come in and stand like a circus horse, and then he's going to rear up, at which point I disappear and the front step ladder disappears, and it's just my legs with an animated horse on top. And horses come into the nose, not because there's a horse in anywhere in Gogol, but there are lots of horses in Russian socialist realist painting. I mean, horses are both the noble animals on equestrian statues, but they're also turned into soap and glue. So the horse as victim is also there as the horse as hero. So it kind of plays on both of those. Now here I have to watch. I advance the image 2 frames, and then shift the horse, the paper horse, along. When I shoot it with the camera, to reshoot what's being projected, with the addition of the extra elements, I'm also shooting 2 frames. We rely on a similarity of shape and tone to make the viewer not understand that we suddenly changed medium. Hi. Hi, boy. Okay. Thank you. We'll just get this guy up and then we'll stop.